Okay, thank you. So the events I intend to discuss in this presentation took place just over 3.5 years ago, and I'm aware that for most of the archaeologists this may seem too recent to even be considered archaeology. However, I'm also convinced that our discipline is very well suited to engage in discourse over contemporary material culture, its meaning and its influence on modern societies, because we usually consider this archaeology merely automatically because we know its context and chronology. So why would we deny the same status to this carving that was done by a child during one of the long 27 days of imprisonment in the basement of Yahidne school? All those images are the outcomes of some dramatic events, and all of them bear some emotional resonance and are informative. So today I will speak about material legacy of the Yahidne war crime that took place on March 2022. But that will not be another presentation of forensic archaeology, a case study. Instead of that, I would like to reflect on the meaning of material heritage that is related to such types of crime, especially the crime that took place in Yahidne. So I would like to pose the questions in my presentation about what is the future of this place, why does the local community want to preserve it, and why in general do Western societies tend to embrace the memory about difficult pasts instead of suppressing them and trying to forget. And to find the answers to those questions, I will use the hauntology that was developed by Jacques Derrida and partially inspired by works of psychoanalysts Maria and Abraham Torok, who examined how undisclosed trauma is transmitted across generations. So according to Derrida, a dramatic event, such as a war crime under discussion here, may give the rise to the spectre, the one that comes uninvited in unexpected moments in the act of hunting. The spectre is understood not as a memory of past events. It is a phenomena that make us aware of what is no longer present, what was lost, and it can shape the present and the future of societies as well. According to Derrida, the spectre inhabits what he called the out-of-joint time that disrupts the linear flow of history. The spectre can arrive simultaneously both from the past and the future, the past that have been shattered by some dramatic, traumatic event, and the future that was expected to materialize in a certain form, but will never fully come true because it's been stolen and shattered by those traumatic events I just mentioned. There is also the idea of the uncanny that reveals strange within the familiar. That's how he called it. The strange can be related, for example, to the things, phenomena, or material culture that is out of place, do not fit to the larger picture. And there is the idea of the trace, which embodies absence within the present. So what was lost, for example, suppressed memories, unacknowledged crimes, loss that have not been properly processed and released, and so on. And there is also the order which is related to the hope for justice and expectation or readiness to take ethical responsibility for what happened. So as you can see, this topic shares some similarities, some parallels with the studies, for example, on post-traumatic stress disorder. And I will try to use hauntology while interpreting the sources I want to present today. So first, we'll start from the very beginning, a dramatic event that gave the rise to the spectre. So Yahidne is a village that is located about 100 kilometers northeast of Kyiv on the eastern bank of Desna River and about 15 kilometers south of Chernihiv, the largest city in the region. Just 7 days after the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion on Ukraine, Russian forces suddenly arrived to the village, and being unable to reach their main objective, which was taking the city of Chernihiv, they resorted to widespread terror against civilians, killing many people on spot that they met in the village and arresting about 350 civilians, confining them to 2 square meters basement of the local school. The upper floors of the school were taken by soldiers as garrison and headquarters, and in that way civilians served as human shield. Among those 350 civilians, there were 70 children. The youngest one was 1.5 old infant, and the oldest person was 93 years old. Civilians, prisoners were deprived of the most basic commodities like access to running water, sufficient food, access to toilet, access to medicines and medical health care, and there was no ventilation in the basement. Everybody were crowded, so soon the atmosphere became suffocating and damp, and day after day the older people started to get weaker and weaker, and soon they started to die. Reportedly, at every occasion, Russian soldiers tormented their prisoners. And just to give you the context, the crime was committed by the 55th Mountain Motor Brigade, which is from Kyzyl, Tuva Republic, Russia. So that's Yahidne. Here, that's Kyzyl. The distance between those two places is 3,500 kilometers. So most possibly none of the Tuvians that serve in the brigade had ever met any Ukrainians before or had any quarrel with Ukrainians until they came to Ukraine and committed this crime. Regarding the recurring nature of the spectra, Jacques Derrida sometimes referred to the works of other philosopher Roland Barthes, especially to his works on photography, because those topics share some parallels with hantology. Roland Barthes even wrote in his famous book Camera Lucida that photographic cameras were, in short, the clocks for seeing, the seeing clocks. And this metaphor refers not only to clockwork mechanism of analog cameras, which he described, but it also refers to the power of photographs of bringing the past to the present. And obviously, some of the photographs can make us viscerally aware of things that are no longer present or have been taken from us. In the study presented, such seeing clocks were high resolution satellite images that allowed me to create some context of the Russian occupation. I applied to different providers. I was refused by all of them because of the ongoing conflict, but I was able to use 2 images only because they've been published on the Google Earth, and I was able to use them. But the sheer detail of that is visible on those images is quite surprising. So those are 2 images from the time of the occupation of Yahidne. So that's the that's the village of Yahidne, and the burnt out area and smoke rising from some of the buildings indicates still ongoing combat. There is, for example, a checkpoint, old Ukrainian checkpoint at the northern outskirts of the village, which have been destroyed at the first days of Russian occupation. Just nearby the checkpoint, there is a wrecked, burnt out wreck of tank with its turret just lying nearby. This is the center of the village with chapel and destroyed coffee house and a truck. According to eyewitness reports, this truck was driven by a driver who was unaware of Russian presence in the region. It was immobilized, and the driver was taken prisoner and spent 27 days in the basement together with the other residents of the village. That's the view towards Kyiv and the chapel on the right, and that's the interior of the coffee house. Later on, someone made there a graffiti. Satellite images also show heavy military vehicle movement. All of those trucks are going north to Chernihiv or coming back from Chernihiv. There are also numerous civilian immobilized trucks that are standing on the road, and the fate of their drivers remains unknown. Most of the fields are covered with numerous explosion craters caused by artillery barrage, and now we'll move closer to the school, which is here. So as you can see all around the school, there are deep vehicle tracks imprinted in the fields, which indicate again heavy military vehicle movements. Some of the fields are still also covered with artillery craters. The main road leading towards the school have been fortified by Russians, so you can see here and there the shooting holes. Some of the buildings have been damaged, and there is one surprising thing that was captured at this image. If you look closely here, you will notice that some of the Russian soldiers just came out of the building and they cast long shadows, and those shadows are visible, a kind of a spectral presence, if you ask me. Careful observer will also be able to notice fortifications in the wood that have been made for heavy armored Russian vehicles. comparison between the images from 18th and 22nd of March allows to detect the further destruction of the town, of the village due to ongoing combat. For example, school have been hit by a Grad missile here and into the facade. Some of the buildings that were used by Russian soldiers as a strong points and temporary garrison have been also targeted and destroyed. Here you can actually see that one of the trucks have been burned, the other one was immobilized, pushed aside, and they moved here and they took this the house. So if I ask you about the absence at those images, what is absent and still the most important, probably some of you would realize or answer this question that those are prisoners that are invisible in this image and they are still somehow present in this drama that happens there. Now we'll move to the ground perspective and we'll look how the material heritage of this crime looks like from the ground perspective and inside the buildings. And I will refer to the ideas of trace, absence, and the uncanny. So until the present day, most of the larger part of the village have been renovated. However, there are still some signs of destruction, like destroyed roofs destroyed, damaged by artillery blast. That's, for example, local cultural center that have been used by Russian soldiers as secondary garrison, and it was destroyed during the last days of the occupation. Those are relics of local health center, which was razed to the ground. This is the road leading to school, which I pointed out to you at the satellite image. New surface has been put there, lampposts have been installed, and those buildings previously damaged have been restored, so people live inside them right now. However, the whole area is still scattered by some relics of combat, like, for example, those elements of engines from Grad missiles. There is also a large number of shrapnels all around. And that's the school, the eastern facade of the school, with visible impact of Grad missile here, which I pointed out to you on satellite image, and also here. That's the interior of the basement, the largest of the rooms where prisoners were kept, very crowded, so there was no place to lay down and rest. On the children could do that, but the adults were sleeping while sitting. At some point, someone decided to make the situation more bearable for children and to occupy them with something joyful. Someone handed over them crayons and paints, and so children start to paint different things on the walls, things that usually inhabit children's imagination, like characters from computer memes or from very favorite computer games, like characters from Among Us, Mattox from Minecraft, but also ordinary things that every parent knows children draw, like sun, flag, here Ukrainian flag, clouds, butterflies, trees, and so on and so on. In the places where there was no crayons or paints, children used charcoals to draw different kind of scenes. And adult population also drew some things. They left some notes on the walls, but those were of different kind, mostly calendars. And here is one of the more important calendars, which, for example, mark the 30th of March, the day when Russian forces left to avoid with the Ukrainian counter-offensive, and people were free. And on the next day, someone came back to this basement and put the note, 31st of March, ours have come, our soldiers have come, just to mark this point. On the left, there are people who were found in the village dead, killed by Russian soldiers. In fact, there was later on found more of them. And on the right, there are surnames of people who died from exhaustion in the basement. So as you can see, this dramatic event left a deep sense of harm among the local population, gave the rise to the spectre, and now all the thoughts of the local population is directed towards what happened and what we can do to cope with those dramatic events. The upper floors were occupied by Russian soldiers. They also left a large number of material evidence, some refuse, half-burnt cigarettes. Some of the rooms have been fortified using munition boxes filled with sand. There is a large number of half-eaten military rations, but also a large number of propaganda newspapers, special edition of Komsomolska Pravda that was given to Ukrainian civilians and soldiers that announced a swift Russian victory that never fully materialized, as we know right now. And there is also a number of uniforms or elements of uniforms, boots, and so on. And there are even hostile writings on the walls directed against the Ukrainian counterparts, and the drawings that show the zones of fire and defense with the name of the brigade, 55th Brigade. All those elements create the deep sense of the uncanny, because they are things that do not fit to the picture of abandoned school. We recognize this school, but spent military uniform, strange notes on the walls, calendars, but also this note here, Ostrożno, dzieci, beware, children, makes us viscerally aware that something bad happened there. We feel uncanny there because we know that those things do not fit to the larger picture. And obviously they contrast with peaceful elements like peaceful drawing from the time when the school was still operating, or children's clothes, or many, many other artifacts. And now I'll speak about the others. So soon about the abandonment, about the end of the Russian occupation, the decision was made by the local government that the school will never again serve its original purpose, because children cannot be faced with the traumatic events they had to endure, and there is a hope that it will be turned into the museum. But before that, it has to be renovated. It's been damaged by the combat. So in cooperation with the Ukrainian Ministry of Culture, the Polish National Institute of Heritage ordered scanning and photogrammetric documentation of the whole school before it will be renovated. That was required for that, to register it in its original form. And also a local museum from Chernihiv collected some of the more important artifacts that will be used for future exhibition. Some CAD plans were also done for planning purposes, and that's one of the propositions of how the school will look like when it will be turned into the museum. It caused some controversy among local population. Understand that firstly, the school have been transformed mentally by those dramatic events, by the crime, and right now it has to be transformed physically to fulfill its new duties. And for now, there is a monument on the back of the school commemorating the victims of the crimes. So the hope for the other, the hope for the arrival of the other, the hope for justice, and the hope to take readiness to take ethical responsibility for what happened in the eyes of the local communities, to create the museum that will commemorate and acknowledge what happened there. And their hope is also to widespread the knowledge about the harm that was done in this village. Thank you very much for your attention.